Hi, and welcome to British Dad Reacts. My name is John. Thank you for watching. And it's always appreciated if you'd consider leaving a like, subscribing, leave a comment or a recommendation. If you recognize this visual, then you'll remember music from the early 1990s and an incredible album called Screamadelica. I'm going to show a number of live versions of this classic track. It's Moving On Up, and it's by Primal Scream. Now, it was written in the kind of late 1990, early 1991 by Bobby Gillespie, who's the lead singer. And it was first sort of penned and structured as a kind of a slower gospel type ballad. Gospel music from Scotland. Now, they needed to make it a bit more rock and roll, I guess. And then there was an idea that came up, one of their guitarists, Andrew Innes. And they created just a brilliant, brilliant track. And I want to show how it's endured over the years. But let's go way back to 1991, when they appeared on a kind of late night TV program called The Word.
My favourite bands, The Flower of Scotland, Primal Scream, Moving On Up.
I was blind, now I can see.
I want to give a special shout out here to the lady that added a layer of, I don't know, depth, complexity, whatever, to the sound of Primal Scream. And that was Denise Johnson, who you see there. She's obviously features on the official version of the track. And sadly, she was a lady who died way, way too young. An incredible voice and added so much to this band. something about that period and this kind of music that seems to express a freedom. And it's kind of one of the great dance eras in Great Britain. That kind of rave dance culture that just took over the country at the time. And I think there was a freedom to it that had, I don't know, somehow been constrained. Not for everybody, but for some. And this just seemed to say, just enjoy. Now, it was also the period, obviously, as well, when certain substances, shall we say, became more popular amongst dancers and people who went to raves and certain events. Now, for me, I think one of the reasons that this freedom, I guess, brings back and is evocative of so many things, allows this song to continue through the generations. And I want to show a few examples of that. This was Glastonbury in 2003. Now, as I've said many times, Glastonbury, probably the most well-known and largest UK outdoor festival, is where you go for great, great cool music. And when you appear at Glastonbury, it means you're doing well. And that was 2003. Now, they've appeared at Glastonbury many times, and the crowds always respond. This is 2013.
No. This is for Alistair.
Look at the crowd. 2013, from a track that was written in late 1990. Now I've got one more clip to show that's much more recent. And as I said, I think there's something that endures about this band and this particular album. Now, Primal Scream are a Scottish rock and roll band. They were originally formed in, I think, 1982. And they weren't really successful at the beginning. And in fact, Bobby Gillespie, who's the lead singer and wrote a lot of the lyrics, used to double up as the drummer for Jesus and the Mary Chain. And with a few lineup changes and so forth, and this album, Screamadelica, which was their third album, it's what really, really broke them into the mainstream. Now, if you remember, I started with that famous piece of artwork that came with the album. And this was created by someone called Paul Cannell, who, in a strange story, I guess, an anecdotal story, was inspired by a damp water spot he'd seen on a wall or a ceiling, I think, whilst he was under the influence, again, of certain mind-altering substances, shall we say. And it was artwork that became so famous. It was chosen to appear on a stamp in the United Kingdom in 2010. And I think in 2021, a Fender created some custom Stratocaster guitars depicting this artwork. There's just an endurability or an endurance with this track, this band, this song. Now, the last thing I want to do, this was filmed by a fan when they played in Manchester in, well, probably just 4 or 5 months ago in 2025. Almost 35 years after the track was released. "35 years after the track was conceived, and there's still huge crowds following the band and singing along to this particular track." Now, I've covered a lot of Scottish bands on the channel, and I've talked a lot about Scotland, Scottish people, how they're different to English people, different DNA. And I've given some of that history which goes back to Roman times. And some of the music that comes from Scotland is just incredible. And I've covered Simple Minds, Sensational Alex Harvey Band, Proclaimers, Nazareth, Big Country, The Waterboys, Colin Hay, who obviously went off to America. Now, the links to the videos I've shown are in the description. And if you do like this kind of content, as I said, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, leave a comment or a recommendation. Primal Scream, Moving On Up. A track that just endures and always makes, at least me, feel good. Thank you so much for watching.